Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome to the Live Fully Now podcast with me, your host, Shannon Ryan. This is a place where we discover how to go from merely surviving to really thriving and stepping into our divine assignment, our purpose, and our passion. I'm so excited to have today's guest, Tiffany Paul, with us today. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Good to see you again after Egypt.
So good to see you.
Back
Yeah,
to real
so
life.
I know, right? So a little background, Tiffany and I actually met in Egypt back in November. We were there for 11/11/22 portal activation. And to say this was a transformational initiation is a vast understatement. I would love if you could share a little bit more, maybe some of your biggest downloads, your biggest insights, and if this has changed the trajectory of your life.
Yes. Before I get there, I just want to say I'm so proud of you for creating this because I feel like we get all these intuitive drops and inspiration when we're on these trips. And it's one thing to be soaking it all in and riding the high, and it's another thing to put in the work and the action and the discipline to create something. So I am just wanted to reflect that back to you.
Thank you.
And speaking of creation, I feel like the biggest download for me was, when you're in a portal like that you're in Egypt on 11/11, of course, like our human ego mind's like, what can I manifest? Let's manifest the shit out of my life. I mean, we're always manifesting, but of course, you're in these amplified energies. And I remember sitting between the paws of the Sphinx on the morning of 11/11 and thinking about like, what do I want to create and like, what do I want to manifest? And I heard a voice so clearly, whether you want to call it my higher self, guide, a goddess, who knows. I heard like, you don't actually have to do a thing. Like, you don't have to do anything. And my human self was like, but I want to. Like, I want to create something. I want to create an epic life. And they were like, no, 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 you get to. And so shifting that language to like, I want implies like scarcity and lack, and just shifting into and anchoring in the energy of like, I get to create beautiful things like this podcast or a family or a home or a travel experience or what I adorn myself with. We get to do that. We don't have to do anything. And just anchoring into that energy of creation and play and joy. I feel like those codes were really alive throughout the entire trip, but that specific download was so crystal clear.
I love that. Yeah, I definitely resonate with that. I feel like for so long in my life, I've always been trying. I've been trying so hard to get somewhere. And I've
Yeah.
been in this very masculine space of resistance and trying. It's like I needed to prove myself, to fit into society and cultural norms, to be loved, to be liked, all these things. And I realized that, of course, I wasn't manifesting the life of my dreams because I'm going into it in a state of restriction and constriction, and I'm not in flow with the universe. It's like a fish swimming upstream. Of course, I'm going to hit resistance and not manifest the life of my dreams by doing that. So I definitely resonate with that. And it's so important for that reframe for sure.
Yeah, and everything you said, I feel like is like a universal journey. I
Yeah.
don't know anybody who's at any ounce of ambition or wants to create a beautiful life for themselves who hasn't bumped up against that in some way, shape, or form. And that is the deprogramming, that is the remembrance, that is the work. So I know so many can relate, and I've been right there alongside you.
Right. I know. It's a daily choice. It's a daily battle of choosing to sit in the space of the soul and of the intuition rather than in the ego and the mind, and getting too caught up in the thoughts and the shoulds and the comparisons and all of these things, the perfectionism, all of the things, and really sitting in a space of surrendering control to all the outcomes of what I thought my life was going to look like, being okay sitting in the vastness of the unknown and just allowing whatever is meant to show up for me in my life on my path to just come with effortless ease and not trying so hard to grab onto things, fully
Hmm.
trusting that whatever is meant for me will show up in my life and that the universe actually has a much higher plan than my human mind or imagination could probably ever imagine anyway.
Yeah. And I feel like that's the daily work because I feel like we can say, we know that, right? our soul knows that. And so, like you said, anchoring into it because our human forgets it. And
Yeah.
I'm sure you can relate where sometimes you're like very in that frequency of allowance and trust and faith and it's all working out for me. And then some days you're like, is anything working out? And am I really supported? Am I like, is this real? Like, I go back and forth between the two. And like, I like what you said about taking the time to recalibrate. And I think also, like, speaking of like travel to me is like a great time to recalibrate. Like, I
Mhm.
am one that I do go hard. I take action on my dreams. And I can tell when I'm like losing that point of remembrance. And whether, if you can't take a trip, even just spaciousness in a walk or the beach or yoga, like creating that space to like drop in and remember, I feel like is probably going to be a never ending journey. Maybe we'll become ascended masters in this lifetime, but never
You
say
never
never.
you know.
In the
Yeah,
meantime,
I know for me, travel has been so important because it's this beautiful space of the unknown. And it actually is a practice of being super present and super engaged in all the senses, in new places, new cultures, new foods, new people, just fully allowing new experiences and all your senses to be alive and awake. And that's for me when I feel the most alive and like an
yeah.
active participant and co-creator of my reality is when I'm traveling and immersed in this newness.
Same. I feel the same, and that reminds me of a like my. I just went to Bali 2 weeks ago,
Me too.
and I know we would just like maybe
I know,
overlap slightly. We didn't
so
even know it.
crazy.
The universe was calling us to all the portals, and
So
the reason
crazy.
I went to Bali is because I was like, I need to feel alive. I was like in a really growth period of my business, and I was just not feeling alive. So I go to Bali, and like any trip, like there's highs, there's lows, and I'm just like, ugh, I just want to feel joy and alive and free. And then the universe is like, hey, bitch, remember? Being alive is not just being like joy and play at every moment. And it's like embracing that to be alive is to, yes, have adventures and have, joy and laughter and play. And it's like shit's going to go wrong and shit's going to get weird and shit might be stressful or you might feel anxious. And like that is being alive. Like that is the human experience. We
Yeah.
are alive to the full spectrum of the human emotion. I feel like that has been my greatest like evolution of being able to step into my greatest power and highest timeline because I'm no longer resisting the darkness or the anxiety or the sadness or the ups and downs that come with the journey of ascension, being an entrepreneur, being a human. You can put it in any category you want. There's highs and lows. And the more what we resist persists. And
Yep.
when we resist the darkness, we're literally resisting the essence of who we are. And so, I mean, that's just my belief system. But when you said alive and why you travel, that has always been my belief system too, because of the highs and the joys and the newness. But this last trip, and it wasn't anything crazy, but I was just like, there's no tolerance for anything to go wrong. Like, I'm manifesting this.
Hmm.
And when it didn't come through, like, exactly as I envisioned, because that's how manifestations work
Yeah.
sometimes. And when you're offering it up for the highest good, when you're co-creating with the universe, it's not always going to come through exactly as you envision it. It may come through for your highest good. And so that was a good reminder because that way in your daily life, when you're feeling like shitty, you're like, dude, I'm feeling alive.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't need to go anywhere. I'm alive. Feel like shit today.
I mean, and that's such an important reframe, is being able to really feel alive and bring this gratitude and this energy to the highs, the lows, the pains, the struggles, the light, the dark, to the full spectrum. It's when we can find magic in the mundane of the everyday life that we can
Yeah.
really thrive. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm with you, girlfriend.
But
I feel like that's the greatest teacher is finding magic in the mundane, right? Because I
Mhm.
have two kids and the mundane is real because
Yeah.
they have routines. I can't just pick them up and do whatever the hell I want without disrupting something in their life, like sleep or
Yeah.
whatever. And they have a certain bedtime routine, and I want to be their most bedtime routine. And I can't just go travel, bring them to Bali. Like they're not old enough to sit on 23 hours of flight. without driving me crazy or, everybody else crazy on the plane. That it is probably possible. I choose not to enter into that reality.
Yeah.
Nothing's off
Yeah.
limits. But I choose to create a little bit more of a container for my children. But sometimes the mundane happens, and I'm like, this is the 1000th bath time. This is the 1000th snack I've served. This
Mm,
is the 1000th time I put you to sleep. And I'm so grateful for it 95% of the days. And 5% of the days, I'm like, whew, like, how do I find the magic?
yeah.
And it's coming back to presence. And I think gratitude, like you mentioned, is the key to finding the magic in the mundane. Because if you can find gratitude for this fucking glass of water next to me, boom,
Yeah, you're
magic.
good. Yeah.
Exactly. It's as simple as that. And hard.
Yeah. I feel
Simple
like
as and hard.
I don't have children, but I feel like kids are the biggest and best teachers, and they require you to be fully present. They require you to be creative and to think outside the box and to entertain them all the time. And they tell
Yeah.
you exactly how it is. There's no filter there.
Yeah,
So,
they definitely are. Like, and they're a teacher in presence, which is what so many of us have lost in this fast paced, instant gratification culture.
mhm.
And we're addicted to our phones. We're addicted to instant satisfaction, instant delivery, postmating our food, instant likes. And they definitely bring you back to presence.
Yeah, it's a powerful teacher. So I
Yep.
commend commend you for choosing this path of service in this role in this incarnation because it is not an easy one, and I just don't understand how mothers do it. They're literally superwomen. So thank you
Yeah,
for
I
being.
always say, like, I'm all about anchoring in the energy of freedom. And I have not quite figured that out fully with my kids because it is a huge, I'm saying this for all the other mothers out there. Thank you for that reflection. And for anybody else who's a parent, like, just want you to know, like, you're seen in the energetic, I'm just going to say drain, whether that has a negative connotation or not, but it's an energetic output
Mhm.
that is required to raise kids, and especially if you're a conscious parent, doing it in a way that you're constantly just even working on yourself, like not being triggered, not raising your voice, communicating, making them feel like seen, safe, loved, supported, like also learning boundaries, also this and that, and then finding time to go to the gym and make dinners and register them for kindergarten and bring them to the ballet, and it's like so much. And it is hard for somebody who is very passionate, like I'm sure all of your entire community listening to this is passionate about freedom, when sometimes as a parent you can definitely feel trapped. And that's why taking those moments of jetting off to Bali or Egypt or someplace local or even just a night away and getting into that energy of freedom and reminding yourself that sure, there are moments where you may feel restricted because you're making certain choices to be like a present parent, but there are still possibilities to play in the energy of freedom on the
Mhm.
weekends with childcare, asking for support, with trips, even bringing them along. So there's always a way to play in that frequency, even if it feels like it's a challenge or it's something you can't always maintain.
Yeah. And I think self-care is so important. And I don't know if this resonates with you, but from my friends who are mothers, they oftentimes find it really difficult and feel guilty or have shame around needing to provide self-care for themselves or put themselves first. Actually, I think this is even deeper than that. It's a collective wound, especially in the divine feminine, because we're taught to be these good girls and to be these caretakers and these nurturers and to care for everyone else besides ourselves. And if we don't do that, then we're selfish. And that has been something that I've been breaking out of over the last few years is really stepping into my power, into my truth, taking care of myself first. Because if I don't take care of myself first, I'm not going to be able to show up in the highest vibration or frequency or service to anyone else in my vicinity. So there's a reason why they say put your life mask on before helping others, you know? It's so
Mhm.
vital and necessary.
Yeah. Again, that is such a common challenge that women specifically face, and that one pisses me the fuck off because I didn't grow up like that. I grew up in a family where it was contentious divorce. I kind of grew up early, and I just was like, well, I'm just taking care of myself now. And they were around, but they were just like not hands-on parents. And I did a lot on my own, and they didn't always see and support me the way I preferred. And I was a very angry, rebellious like kid. So like the good girl thing, like I was like, oh, you don't like me the way I am? Well, fuck off. And so I never really had this desire to be a good girl, which I think has served me throughout my life. And I think like that frequency that I hold will help unlock that for others, because it's a program that I never had to decondition myself into. And so I feel like I hold a more natural frequency of preserving the self first and foremost, because as a child I decided early on that it's like, if I'm not going to believe and love and support myself, in my mind I was like, well, no one is, because I had told myself the story that my parents didn't, love and see me as I was. And doesn't mean they didn't love me, but I feel like they didn't accept me the way I was because I didn't fit into their box or follow their rules, or you know whatever it was, xyz. And so I decided early on that it's like, well, I have big dreams for my life. And if they're not going to support me, or they don't know how to support me, then I better learn to support myself. And so this skill of putting myself first, of being my own number one, supporter, has allowed me to create an expansive life, to take risks, to build, to travel, to fail, to just put myself out there, knowing that like no matter what, like I support me versus relying on other people. And at the same time, there is a toxicity in being hyper independent that that's the program I've had to decondition from, because there is underneath that a disbelief, a misbelief that nobody can support you the way that you can support yourself. So I have had to, and speaking of the divine feminine, work on receiving support and trusting that others around me can support me in building my dreams and helping with my kids, or even trusting the universe to support me. Because for a long time, going back to your original point of like kind of hustling and trying to validate yourself, because there was a lot of that going on in me as well, right?
Mhm.
I was like, it's all on me. Like I have to achieve and do and succeed to prove that I am worthy and they were wrong. And
Mm.
if I don't achieve, then that might mean my greatest fear is true, which is I'm not enough and they
Mhm.
were right. And when several failures came up in my life, I got to look at that and realize that, okay, shit hit the fan. It didn't work out how I want. I lost everything. And wow, I guess I am enough and I am okay. But it
Mhm.
started out as fuck. Now who am I? And I'm nothing. So just because I didn't get one side of the program didn't mean I didn't get the other half of it. But just to your point of putting yourself first, it is so imperative. If I don't take care of myself, I'm a horrible boss. I'm a horrible wife, and I'm a horrible mom. I'm impatient. I'm a bitch. I'm condescending. I'm short tempered. I hate my life. I'm tired. So I'm all for putting yourself first in service
Yes.
of, yeah, yourself and others.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's interesting hearing you speak to that because I feel like both sides of the coin resonate with me. I definitely felt like I had to be the good girl or fit in, but I also feel like I actually was a rebel and I actually did do whatever I wanted. And I know that I was rebelling to seek attention, right? But also I had this similar belief system that I was the only one that I could count on.
Yeah.
And I also have this toxic independence in me that has pushed everyone away for so
Yeah.
long, not allowed anyone to help me, not allowed anyone to get close to me, have these really, really strong walls up to not be vulnerable or let anyone in because of fear of they're not going to show up for me. I can't trust them. I can only count on myself. And
Mm-hmm.
it's required so much work and so much growth to really even begin to like break down all of these limiting beliefs and decondition and restructure my neural pathways and my beliefs that are actually my own beliefs, not based on unconscious ones that were chosen for me by my family when I was younger.
Yeah. And I've gone through the same, right? And the best advice I would give to you or anybody listening with that is like, because when you're in that, you'll call in people, right, that are not at supporting with the level that you believe, because you don't believe that they're going to. And so instead of using that as evidence of, see, like, I knew it, like, I can't trust anybody, which, you can have that for a moment. Don't bypass your emotions. But what I like to do is use those as opportunities to tell the universe, like, no, not available. So open, that's the practice. Open the heart up, asking for support, knowing that maybe there's going to be people who come in and burn you, fuck you, don't give what you were expecting, and then you cut it, you release it, and you say, no thank you, universe. And the more you allow it in, you can then create a boundary or cut the cord and say no. And I believe that every action we take is communication with the universe. So by opening your heart and asking for support, sure, we may have negative experiences if we haven't reprogrammed that program yet, or deconditioned from that program. But for anybody who's nervous about opening their heart because they're hyper independent, just know that, like, by asking for support, then you are directly telling the universe, I'm open for support. And then maybe somebody will come in. And then if you're like, not the level of support I want, no thank you, that's another action. So you just consider it like you have to just start somewhere. And eventually I'm at a point now where I call in people that are like, I don't want people above, but I like equal.
Mhm.
Reciprocity is like the ultimate energy of abundance, like just
Mhm.
around and around. And so it's like I want a give and take, give and take. And that is where I feel like I've finally gotten to, but it definitely took a few temper tantrums of like, see, I knew it. I'm gonna be like alone forever and like not have any support, and I have to do this on my own. And like, why does the universe support everybody else and not me? And like da da da. So been there.
For sure. And just being able to surrender into this energy of the softness, right? Of the divine feminine, and being able to receive and allow others to love you, allow others to help you, has been so powerful and just very difficult as well. And I feel like there's been so many lessons or things happening for me on my path that are for these lessons.
Yeah.
Difficulties, struggles. It's like, oh, what's the lesson here? You need to ask for help. Okay. Yes, that's done.
Yeah. And one thing you said too about things happening for you, I think that is something that we hear a lot in this like spiritual community. And I am a firm believer of that. And I think when bad things happen, that's when it's a tough pill to swallow, right? But one thing that a shift in that phrase that I've used during those moments where you feel like you're not really getting what you're trying to manifest, instead you're getting a lesson. I always say like the universe is working in my favor for like my highest evolution. So I think our ego mind likes to hear the phrase everything's happening for you, meaning it's going to work like for like your greatest, yeah, for just like good, for like joy, because so you can get what you want. And it's
Mhm.
not work out for you so you can get what you want. It's work out for your soul's evolution, or for your highest self's journey here, or for your destiny, and or for the lesson that you need to learn, or for the growth that is required. It's not just, I just feel like changing it to
Mhm.
working out for my highest evolution sometimes helps me when shitty things happen, because you're like, why is this for me? Because it's the ego saying like, this is not what I wanted. And
Yeah.
so when you shift it into like, this is working for my highest evolution, it's an opportunity to learn, grow, expand.
Yeah.
I feel like it just helps when those moments come in where you're like,
Yeah.
okay, I have to work on this, or this is a lesson.
Yeah, I mean, because growth is not comfortable. Growth is painful.
Yeah.
And a lot of
Hmm.
these teachers, these lessons are coming into our life to force us to grow, to make us uncomfortable enough so that we choose to grow. And that's such a powerful reframe. I love that. I'm definitely gonna use that one.
Yeah. Evolution is our natural state. And why it's painful is because so many of us resist it.
Yeah.
We assign meaning, good or bad, to situations that are essentially neutral. And this is another point in like the modern spirituality um, conversation that I dislike, because I think there is a little bit of misinterpretation around it, where there's the language of like, you attract what you are, and if you're manifesting these hard things for yourself, it's because you have a block, or you have a misbelief about yourself. And sometimes that's true, but it's we as humans that assign the thing as good or bad.
Mm.
So what the universe is delivering us could actually be like an amazing gift. Like a breakup could be an amazing gift. It doesn't mean like, oh, you must think you're unlovable. You think every person that found love was like, I'm so lovable. I met my husband at 19 and I can tell you, I didn't, I just told you. I had to believe I loved myself, but I had a very core wound that I was not able to be loved. I
Mm,
manifested him at 19. I didn't have that belief all cleaned up. So I dislike that conversation because people think that if they're not manifesting love or the money or something, it's like, oh, because I'm so scarce or because I have this belief. We're fucking human. Even even the most wealthy people have days where they're gonna fall into scarcity. We're not monks over here. And so I just feel like a good reminder that we as humans assign things as good or bad, and most things are neutral, or if not, and everything is neutral.
mhm,
It's also another reminder of when bad things come into your life, are they bad? Or did you just assign it as bad?
mm,
Because let's say you're accumulating a lot of debt. Our human self would say, that's bad. I must be like in the manifestation narrative, it would say, well, you must have like a block to abundance and wealth, and you must have scarcity. Maybe you should heal your lineage and your ancestors. And like, what did your parents tell you about money? And it's like, but what if like you're just learning like a really cool lesson about how to find abundance beyond money? Because
yeah,
abundance isn't just money. What if it's anchoring into like resilience? What if it's
mm,
finding peace amid the storm? Like, what are you learning in these hard moments? And like, what if that's the greatest gift you ever had? Like, what if you're calling that in because your fucking higher self's like, this bitch is a badass. Let's get her. Let's give her some shit. She's about to rise up. It's like the montage in the movies where like they keep falling down. It's like because they're like
mhm,
warriors and they're on their way up. It's not because they're like, oh, I'm scarce and unlovable. No one will ever see and support me. I just
mhm.
think we have it all wrong, and that drives me crazy.
I totally agree. Yeah, such an important reframe because our human mind always wants to attach that meaning, and I think viewing things as neutral is perfect.
Yeah.
It's always
And again,
easier.
easier said than done, but like another tangible tool that we can put in our toolbox of like, all right, neutrality is sometimes also easier to get to even than like higher or lower emotions, just neutral.
Yeah, yeah, and changeable and malleable, right?
Yeah. And
You don't
neutral
have to be
also, yeah, and neutral also aligns with the allowance that you talked about earlier, right?
Mhm,
Because when you're neutral, you're actually unattached. If you're like, this phone is going to bring me so much freedom, I can talk anywhere I want. In ways you're like, the freedom is the attachment because you're like, this phone is going to give me that thing versus just being like, that's cool. Like
mhm,
it's just a easier energy to for allowance versus, and plus half the time what we think is going to bring us freedom and joy and happiness is fucking wrong. We've seen a million examples of people achieve all their dreams, get their house, get their money, sell their business, do the thing. Same. Like done all the things and I'm like, dude, this isn't happy because we have told ourselves that those things are going to bring us freedom and joy and happiness, and that's not where it comes from. That's just what we've been programmed to believe, and it's in
mhm,
the programming that we become attached, and in our attachment we're actually not allowing, and that's why we're forcing and pushing because we're attached to the fact that we need the thing in order to feel free. In reality it's neutral.
mhm.
So I'd love to hear
Yeah,
more about your story. Tell me.
and it's all not even revolving around the situation or the things really, but it's revolving around the emotion that it brings up, right? So we
Yeah.
think if we get X, we'll feel Y.
Yeah.
And so if we can really step out of that and understand what we're craving to feel, what we desire to feel, then we can move towards that. And it doesn't need to be this specific material good or asset to bring us the feeling that we're seeking. If you seek joy, if you seek happiness, if you seek fulfillment, really narrowing down and getting to the bottom of what you need to do to have that feeling and that emotion, then you can really navigate your life in much more of a conscious way with less
Yeah.
attachment.
Right. The more you assign external things as the means to feeling your internal emotions, the more you're giving power away to the external world. And I feel like that is the assignment many of us are walking right now, where we are anchoring into true sovereignty and true power. And true power, in my opinion, is not reliant upon external things. And for the longest time, power has been defined by, status and money and hierarchy and all the things. And ultimately, when you're dependent on other things to feel enough, that's artificial power, because it can be taken away. And if you lose all of your status and your money and your relationship and your car and your home, and you're left to just your soul, yourself walking down the street, it's like, do you still feel powerful? Because if the answer is no, it's actually not the highest form of power. The highest form of power is the person who can like walk, stand in their own right without any of those things, and still be like, I'm enough no matter what, no matter if I achieve a thing, whether I have a thing, whether this relationship works out, whether I'm a mom, whether I ever find love. And like, easier said than done, but I think that is the assignment and the task that so many of us are working to find right now, because we have given our power away to the
Mm.
external world, and we are striving towards these things: money, fame, followers, a relationship, a family, in order to feel enough and in our power. And it's time to stop waiting to be reminded of our power. And it's time to step into our power here and now without any of those things. And I understand it's easier to stand in your power with all those things. So I'm not going to pretend like this is an easy, or I don't even know if it's possible, because I'm not living on the street with nothing. But I did lose everything, and my bank account has been to zero, and my business did collapse. And I wondered if my relationship was going to work out or not. And I've downsized my whole life. Like, I've done things that have stripped away like a lot of these things. And it was the greatest blessing in disguise. And so I'm not saying you need to go live on the street to be like, how do you feel now? Are you powerful? But it's just a concept to imagine. I think a similar concept to imagine is like how when we think of like a homeless person or a celebrity, and we're like, who is more valuable? I bet you most people's brain goes to the celebrity, but the answer is they're the same. Because they are both souls, they're both humans, and humanity, like innately, we're equal. And we have decided that because a celebrity or somebody who has followers or fame or is in a movie or has a certain career is somewhat more valuable, that's just the old paradigm of power that we are shifting away from, and stepping more into the knowing that like we are all equals, we are all powerful, and it's time that we all start being leaders of our own lives, and recognizing and seeing the power not only in ourselves but in one another, no matter what they have or who they are.
Mm. Yes, I love that. I would love for you to speak to that a little bit more, like this new paradigm, the new earth, where you think we're going, and advising listeners how to really step into and reclaim their power.
I think it just really starts with looking at all the things that have power over you, right? We've touched on that a little bit. So, where are you giving away your power? Like, that's a really great place to start. So, where are you telling yourself, I'll be happy when? Where are you telling yourself, I'm unhappy with? And wherever you're unhappy with something, or wherever you're waiting to be happy because it's not arrived, that's where you're giving your power away. And so underneath
Mm.
that is typically a core wound or a belief system. And there's a million healers out there, and there's a million books and a million podcasts and a million programs that are available to help people walk into deconditioning and working with these programs. And there's a lot of healers that are out of integrity, and there are a lot of those that are in integrity. I always say that when you get to that point where you're like looking at, why do I not feel enough, and how do I reprogram this, and not looking for a game of perfection, but where do I go next? I always say, don't look to necessarily a guru or a guide. Call on the universe. Like, that's where you ask the universe, like, show me, bring me the lessons to heal this. Show me, like, the podcast, the guide, the teacher, like, show me. And then also note that sometimes the universe will bring you a fake ass person. You're like, what the fuck? I said, show me. And that's just probably an opportunity for you to look at, how does that relate to your wound? Did you have a distrust? So
Mm.
I think, I hope that I don't want, because I could go on forever, but like, I want to start with like a bite-sized piece.
Yeah.
I feel like just looking at what has power over you, And where are you waiting in your life to feel happy or feel enough or feel happy or feel free? Like those are the points where you can identify where you're giving your power away. And I think stepping into the new paradigm of power is calling all of your energy back and calling your power back to the point of like putting yourself first. It's like, in order to take action on those two areas, you're probably going to make some moves, right? Have some hard conversations, make some decisions, add some things, delete some things. And that's where the action comes into place. It's not just visualization and manifestation and like energetics and wishing and visualizing and journaling. It's taking action to remedy the resistance. Because
Mm.
where we are resisting, we're suffering. So I think just looking at those areas is a good place to start. And then I would just say a slight second would be just acceptance of what is,
Mm.
because we have to accept where we're at. And when we accept where we're at, it relaxes the nervous system to allow us to call in the next phase, the next healing or opportunity. And the more we're like, oh, I hate this house, it's so small, and why don't I have more room, and this dog, and the more we're doing that, and I've been there, and it's like, ooh, our energy is just all fucked. So I think accepting whatever you're in, as hard as it can be, even if it's just like a portion of what is the whole, is still helpful. And like for me too, for example, I'm not in my dream home. Like I'm in a townhouse and I downsized in order to like go after my dreams. And I had this vision of like this multi-million-dollar home that I want to own one day. And sometimes I'm like, is it ever gonna happen? I've been here for 4 years, And I'll find like these little things of like, oh, like I'm gonna buy like a rug that I would buy for like if this was my dream house. And whenever I walk past the rug, I'm like, this is the energy of my mansion. Or like a really expensive like patio chair. And I'm like, this is the energy. So there's other things you can do to play with the energy of where you're at now. So it's like acceptance and enhancement. So I think those are just great places to start, because if we could all call back some of our power, take action on the places where we feel resistance, and accept and appreciate where we're at, no matter good or bad, because we know that it's just exactly where we're meant to be in this moment and not a forever point. I think would be some good tangible things that people could look to in order to start calling back their power, because that is the new paradigm, is that we are all leaders of the new earth, and it's
Mm.
not just the gurus or the people at the top.
And why do you think that us reclaiming our power or stepping back into our sovereignty, our divinity, is so important in co-creating this new earth paradigm going forward?
Well, I think two things come to mind. Why it's important is because that's what we came here to do. Like, we are natural born creators. And so when you've given your power away, you're actually disconnected from your ability to create, because you have just decided that life is this way, and it's out to get you, and it's not going to work out. And I think that we have a piece of the divine within us, that we're all creators. We're manifesting in every moment. And whether you realize it or not, we are creators. And the more that we remember our power to create, the more that we can create a beautiful life. And like, we didn't come here, I was like, we didn't come here to suffer, but I'm like, yeah, we kind of did.
A little bit to learn and grow
Yeah,
and
a little
change
bit.
and
A little. We didn't come here to suffer the whole time. We
yeah.
came here to learn lessons, but we came here to, like, I think, play and create. And so these lessons are gearing us up, I think, to shed
Mhm.
away and really step into our power. And I think that feels important to me. And the second thing, besides being connected to our power to create, is when you step into your power, you're no longer able to be controlled. And that is a really essential piece, because there's a lot of mind control, whatever you want to call it, like
Yes.
programming beliefs that have us in a fear-based headlock.
Mhm.
And I've never used that before, and that was just like what came through. I love that. Um, and I think that when you stand in your own power, you're no longer controlled. So somebody comes in, they say something, like, it can be simple as like being in a coffee shop, somebody's rude to you, and you're like unbothered, because then because you become sovereign in your own field, and that person has not ruined your whole day because they were an asshole. You're like, moving
Yeah.
on. Or you'd have the courage to stand up to your boss or ask for a raise or set boundaries when it comes to when you will work, what projects you'll take on, setting boundaries because you're no longer controlled, you're no longer in fear, or maybe it's quitting the job or leaving the relationship. And so when you're in your power, you're less likely to be controlled. And we're not meant to be controlled. We are sovereign beings and we are creators. And I think that is why it's important to call back our power.
Mm. Yeah, and it's also stepping out of victimhood, right? It's where we can step into our authority, into our power, and take radical self-responsibility for all the things that are showing up in our field. So I think that that's definitely necessary, is this reclamation of power, not only for that reason, but also for this divine remembrance, because like you said before, we all have this divinity within us, and we have just forgotten. We've been in amnesia, asleep. We've been programmed and conditioned to forget our power, our divinity. And it's time for us to remember to awaken to our truth and to our divinity, our light, and to be in joy, be in bliss, be in abundance, because these are our birthrights.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the other thing that just came through is you're talking about amnesia. So I've been on this journey of, just seeking what is beyond the program. What else is out there? I'm the host of Break the Matrix podcast, as you know, and I've had, people in channeling aliens and cosmic wisdom, and I've been to Egypt and Bali. And, as I've been on this journey of, I had my major spiritual awakening in 2020. And so ever since then, it's been like 3 years of exploration. But, we're all, I think, awakening slowly all the time. But I got to a point where speaking of acceptance, I think as humans, this is only my belief, but I think something that we in the spiritual community need to consider is that we need to radically accept that like there is amnesia for a reason. I
Mhm.
think we're just constantly trying to find all these answers of like, why are we here? And who is the Illuminati? And like, what do the aliens have to say? And do the government know about aliens? And what is NASA? And like, what about the royal family? And like, we'll never fucking know. And I think anybody
Yeah.
who says like they know, I'm not saying they're wrong, but like, do they know? Like, we all have our own intuitive knowing, and that I do not discount. And like intuitively, a lot of that stuff feels true. But like, do I really know? Like, if I'm gonna like sacrifice everything, like, bet on it for sure. I don't know. We don't really know. They're like, okay, fine, like bet your whole life on it. Would you? No, because you don't really know. You think you know, and you're probably right, but like we don't know. And so I think that part of stepping into our power as a human in this lifetime, because we came here to be humans, not aliens, and we don't live on Mars, or we're in the Pleiades or whatever. We came here to be humans. We obviously chose to have this motherfucking amnesia that I motherfucking hate some days, and I'm like, what the fuck? I want to talk to my starseed family. Where's my Arcturian family? Why
Yeah.
are you not talking to me? Why did you leave me alone? Done you alone? And I like get jealous sometimes of these people that are like their channel is open, they're hearing all these things, and like I channel, like I think it's my highest self. I don't know where it comes from because I don't hear like, hi, this is Isis. Like I'm the one telling you that like it's a fear-based headlock. I don't know where that came from, but I'm telling you, I can tell that was a channel because I
Yeah.
energetically know when I'm talking and when it's coming through my
Mhm.
channel. So sometimes, okay, and then also I don't know if you've heard this or ever felt this, but when they talk about like, oh, the more work you do and the more ascended you are and the more awake and whatever, your channels open, your psychic gifts are just going to keep opening and locking. And I'm like, I've been on this path for so like not so long, but like for 3 years, and like I am more intuitive, but like I don't hear those things still. And I've come to the understanding and the acceptance that like I'm not meant to.
Yeah.
Like
No.
my soul's path and my destiny was like, you're not getting that gift, at least not yet. Because I do feel like I have had to then learn to trust my human self intrinsically. And then I get to teach that to others. Because if I'm talking to Mary Magdalene and Jesus and everything and all these guys all the time, and I'm trying to tell some average Joe like my Minnesotan relatives, trust yourself, but I'm over here consulting with Jesus. It's harder to relate to. So in ways I feel like my psychic gifts in that way have not turned on because I want to be a power of example that you can trust yourself and your intuition without those gifts turning on in the way that like our ego wants them to, or that maybe they have turned on for other people. And just accepting that like we may not know the answers. And I just think sometimes the seeking and the constant healing is a distraction to our destiny. And our destiny and our mission requires us to be grounded and focused and do the work. And I'm a proponent of healing and seeking in a healthy dose. But I just feel like called, because we've been talking about acceptance. And I think that after I crossed that threshold of, we'll never know,
Mhm.
it really brought me back into just the day-to-day life and like doing my mission work and showing up as all of me all the time versus waiting for like my psychic gifts to come out. Aliens to come down. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's beautiful what you said because so much of the spiritual community talks about these gifts. And I've actually, had a lot of different healing modalities and gone through different periods of my life where I was feeling the same thing. Like, why am I not receiving these uh, voices channeled through me? And again, it's this egoic attachment to what we want it to look like, what we want it to sound like. But that's all upper chakras and very floaty, very vata, very ungrounded. So
Yes.
my more recent work has been much more embodied, grounded work. And yes, both polarities are good, but when we can bring the top chakras, the wisdom, the insight, all of that into the bottom chakras and the root and the grounding, that's really when we can alchemize it and utilize all of our gifts. And I also want to mention that you do have spiritual gifts. We all do. And I'm sure you're aware of this, but claircognizance is having the intuitive feeling, and clair
Yeah.
sentience is, yeah, wait, did I say feeling? Anyways, those are two of the ones that you're obviously showing that you have. It's just
Exactly.
minds are so conditioned to want to hear the voices, right?
Exactly. I agree. I think everybody does have intuitive gifts. It's just not going to turn on the way like our ego mind or that sometimes the certain thought leaders have presented it as. And the other thing that my own intuitive has shared is she's like, so many of you guys are intuitive in like these unique ways that you're just really not getting. Like me, for example, should be like, you're so intuitive with business. You know, like anybody who can see
Mhm.
trends in business or see like like a potential success, that's it's intuition. Where do you think that's not coming from your mind? It's not just like you're calculating the probability of success. That's like an intuitive knowing of like this could work, that, or like you're in HR. Is this a good candidate? It's not. That you're using your intuition. And like as you're an artist, like you're using your intuition to create. Like we actually all have intuitive abilities. It's just that we've been giving them in these unique packages and it doesn't fit like the status quo, which is again another program we're all like shutting is fuck the status quo. Stop it. Stop being your own worst enemies by comparing yourself to one story that was written for all humanity in one box.
Oh God, we're all rainbow sheep. We're breaking out of the matrix, breaking out of the box, and
Yes,
shining
we're
in our own
ready.
brilliance and uniqueness. I love it. Yeah, I love what you said about intuition and business because I feel like those intuitive knowings and nudges really guide us on the path to finding our dharma, our purpose, and our passion. So I'd love for you to speak to that a little bit and maybe explain a little bit where you are in your life. Do you feel like you're living in alignment with your truth, with your dharma, or what do you feel like your big vision, mission is here in this incarnation?
Yeah, so with my career, it's been like such a pivot, which I always say like if your manifestation works out exactly as you envisioned it, then you're probably not like letting go of control enough because if you're co-creating, it shouldn't really work out exactly as you thought. Like the five-step plan, that's mostly you're willing it to happen and nothing wrong with that. But like as we step into this energetic state of the new paradigm of creation and leadership, you have to rely on your intuition. You have to like regain, you have to let go of control and you have to be aware of when the ego is driving and when the soul is. And so for me, my background is as a child, I always thought like I would be in corporate America because I was really fired up about the fact that there was like no women in leadership and no women CEOs. It was only like 2% or something back then. And I'm like, that's fucked up. I'm going to like get in the business world. I'm going to become a CEO and like break the glass ceiling. Like I was all for that. And so I got my dream job at Procter and Gamble out of college. I was with them for a decade. I realized pretty early on that I was good at business. I always had amazing results, but like I never really fit in culturally. And that was because I didn't conform. And I realized that I was not willing to sacrifice my soul, my true essence, in order to be successful and break the glass ceiling or make a lot of money or, not give up my childhood dream. I gave myself permission to evolve. I honored my soul's calling. I did create a side business in the travel space a few years ahead of leaving. And so I took the leap in 2019 as that business was taking off. And then, in 2020, we had a beautiful pandemic that collapsed that whole thing. So travel halted. My business went to I was in debt overnight because I had invested so
Mm,
heavily as I left to be like, all right, I'm going to invest in a new website, new photos, da da da, so that will come back and pay off. And I had just brought in a lot of inventory and all my cash was tied up in inventory. So it
mm,
was a huge disaster and it was a huge blow to my ego because we hear again these narratives of like jump and the net will appear. And that
yeah.
was a huge moment for me where I was like, there is no net. And I was like, you fucked me over real good, universe. You could have just kept me in my corporate job, kept me safe. But the thing is like I would have probably never left, right? During a
Yeah.
pandemic and it was scary, no one was hiring, and that's not the time to start a business. So I think my soul was like, she needs to go now or she's never gonna go. And we're gonna have her load up a whole bunch of expenses first before we close your business. So rude.
Yeah. Rude, universe.
was
Not
so
appreciated.
pissed. Yeah. And when you take a leap like that, I would say most people, myself, I didn't envision failure. Like when you're mustering up the courage to do something that you're like, it's going to succeed. Like I just see it, I know it. Like there was no even there was not even a chance of failure. I was like, I'm resilient. I will not give up until this thing succeeds. That was me trusting my own will and the 10 years of just grinding and hustling that I had not anchored in these new frequencies yet. So I would say that that was part of my realignment
Mm,
because I was out of alignment with my soul because I was still relying on external things to feel enough, and I was relying on the status of working at a big company or my job title or my paycheck, and then shifting into well, now I'm an entrepreneur and these are my sales and this is my success, and I took the leap and I was relying on that to make me feel cool enough. And then when that all came down, that was a chance for my soul to realign and remember who the fuck I actually was. And like I said, that was when spiritual awakening, everything, all the illusions, all the stories were just what that was all a
what?
lie. It all came down, and that was a really hard place. I mean, I don't know if you can relate to this, but
Oh yeah.
that period of my life, I was just so lost and so feeling so low about myself. And at a point I was just I don't even want to be here. I was
Mm,
just this sucks. If achievement isn't going to make me feel enough, and if the universe doesn't have my back, and I had two beautiful children and a family and my health, and I was and this isn't even enough to make me happy. I'm a horrible person because this should be enough. I have, and I didn't. So I was well, what's the point of even living? And I definitely had those days. So I was just laying on the ground being I wish I was not here, And it didn't get to any sort of action or plan or anything like that. But just sharing that if anybody's at that point, because when you talk about soul alignment, people instantly jump to, yeah, I'm in my soul aligned business and my employees are great and I'm manifesting the money. But it's soul alignment actually started a lot further back
mm,
where it started with the collapse and
misalignment.
the clearing out. Yeah. So the clearing out and the collapse, I think, is a less spoken about part of alignment because we have this misbelief that this story that we're telling ourselves that alignment always needs to feel good. And I do not believe that at
No.
all. That doesn't even make sense. If you Google alignment, it says to be on a line, on a path, not feels good. It's
No.
not, doesn't say that.
Mm-mm.
Alignment, yeah, sure, it can feel good, but alignment to me means you're on the path, the highest path to your soul's evolution. You're on the path. So that was my soul's highest path. And it felt like shit. And I hated my life. And I've had to rebuild ever since.
Yeah.
And at that point, I didn't really know what to do. I still hadn't shut all the programs. I ended up taking out all of my 401k, cashing that out, starting another business because I was all I know what to do is achieve. Like I can't just sit here and be miserable. And like nobody was hiring because it was a pandemic. Well, nobody that I was willing to sell my soul to.
Right.
Um, yes. So I was like, I'll bet on myself, invest in myself. And then I built this business. It was pretty successful. I was in Vogue. I was in Urban Outfitters. Saks picked it up. I was like, I'm gonna build this cool brand. We launched it. We ended up like, exhibiting at Create and Cultivate. And I was like, this is so cool. And I'm like, and I'm still miserable. Like this sucks. Like, so my soul was like not convinced. Like I hadn't learned my lesson yet. I was like,
Mhm.
no, I'm still gonna try to build things to like feel enough. So then I shut that business down like voluntarily. Didn't make back my money. I was just like, call it a loss. I'll find retirement money another day.
I love
And
that.
that's when the pivot occurred. At that point in time, I was like, well, I surrender. Like, I'm tired of trying it my way. Like, I clearly don't know what's best for myself. And like, speaking like that's the funny part about self-trust. It's like you have to trust yourself to take the leap, but you also have to know that sometimes like what our ego mind thinks, like I said, is gonna make us happy and free and it's gonna be good for us. It's not always the case. So I don't feel like I made the wrong decision. But like I
No.
didn't know what was gonna be for my highest good at that point. And at that point I was like really burnt out on like this pressure to like make an email funnel and influencers and show up on social media. And I was like, I just want a boring job. I want a boring behind the scenes business. Like, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm a projector too. So I'm like, I can't be on all the time. I just want to be. Let me be.
Yeah.
So my husband was in the legal industry, and he ended up getting me a consulting gig there to like open up a division in this their administration for mass tort and class action lawsuits. Like super boring, but I surprisingly loved it because it felt like meaningful work. It was basically it's like you're getting money for a wrong like an injury or something from these medical companies or
Yeah.
false advertising. So I'm like I felt like I was on like the right side of justice, and that's definitely who I am,
Mhm.
and my business brain was enjoying like the operational side of it. So that like totally threw me for a loop, and I was like I really like this. And at the same time my husband was like really becoming miserable because his soul had been sucked dry as well, and
Yeah.
he had a really toxic boss. And I was like, why don't we just start like this on our own? Like I really enjoy doing my own thing. Like I can do the operations, you can do the sales, you've been in the industry for 20 years, and let's do it. And the only problem is that a lot of these payments are deferred for like several years. And so we had to raise $2 million. And I was like, I
Wow.
had this calmness about it. I'm like, that's not even a lot of money. Like it's gonna come. Like I just know I had this really calmness. And I think that's also a sign of when you know you're not attached and when you're on the right path. Because I'm like, it's gonna come. And part of it was like because I was not in my ego, right? I wasn't like at this lawsuit with this legal company to become rich or to be cool or for status. I was just
Mhm.
like, give me a job. Like, let me use my skills. Let me be of service. And then the money thing would just felt so easily. We were talking to a friend of ours about it, about how we were going to figure out how to raise money. And he was like, I'll give you the money. I was like, what do you mean you give us the money? Like $2 million? And it took over a year honestly to negotiate the terms of it, and it was like the most painful year of my life, and another practice of trust and patience and all of that. And it eventually went through. We started our own business, and now I am the COO of a legal administration company, which is hilarious. And aligned.
I love
And I
that.
love it. Because it's a business that I'm
So
able to work
amazing.
on, not in. I'm able to build teams to do the work, which is where my gift is. And I get to step away, do my podcast interviews, do my own podcast, go to Bali, be a mom, and not feel like everything's on
Mhm.
me. So
Yeah.
I'm fully where I'm supposed to be in this moment. Do I feel like it's like my forever thing? No. Like I would love to sell the company in 10 years and, live on an island and podcast and write all day, but like that will come.
Yes, and I love that because so many people have the misconception that once you find your dharma, once you find your blueprint or whatever you're supposed to be doing in this incarnation, that that's the only option for you. And the reality is that the dharma is an ever evolving spiral, and it will continue to change, grow, and evolve as you continue to change, grow, and evolve at different stages of your life. So just because you're feeling aligned in this moment doesn't mean that that's all there is for you.
Yeah. And even this particular career, I have gone all in on it because I'm like, obviously, the founder. And then my soul was like very angry at me. And it's like, bitch, you cannot do that. You need to be over here writing and podcasting still and having fun, because even though that's where I'm supposed to be, it's not where I'm supposed to be all my time. So
Mm-hmm.
the other thing too is like, I'm like sometimes an all or nothing person where it's like, I just like to go all in. Like I like to jump all in.
Okay.
And it's important to remember that a lot of our souls came here to play, and that involves doing a little bit of this and a little bit of that. And even though like this thing takes like 70% of our time, like make sure we're still like writing and doing whatever, because I had this idea that I'm like, well, if I can't write for like hours in the day anymore or podcast, I'm just not going to do it. Like what's the point? I'm going to have to go into like business mode an hour later anyways. But it's not about producing, right? Because that's the old mindset. It's about nourishing your soul. It's about adding like some coins into your energy tank. I just made that doesn't make that was not channeled. That was Tiffany's brain. Always what's an energy tank? Coins?
I don't know, but I want to find out.
Coins into the energy bank? I don't know, but you know what I mean? Like you're an investment in your soul, because if your soul's dying, it's not worth it.
Yeah, for sure. And we are so multi-passionate, we're multi-dimensional beings, so really allowing ourselves to explore and play is so
Yeah,
important.
so
Well, I have
important.
one more question before we go, and that is, how would you advise the listeners to live fully now?
I think starting each day asking yourself, like, what do I want? What do I need in order to feel good? And getting in the practice of checking in with yourself and then honoring how you feel by taking action is going to lead to living a life that feels full.
Mm,
And I'm going to give you one more thing. The other thing is dream. Like, give yourself permission to dream and have a big vision for yourself. So many of us have become disconnected from our ability to dream and create a vision because of our belief systems, because of our conditioning. And when we don't have a vision, again, our ability to create is lessened. And so holding a vision for your life and allowing yourself to dream, even if it doesn't even come true, like being in the energy of dreaming and having a big vision will connect you to your highest self, your ability to create, and get you closer to your highest timeline. So dream.
yay. Thank you so much. I absolutely love that. It's amazing advice. So, where can the listeners connect with you? If you share a little bit about your socials and what you're working on, what projects, what services that you have to offer right now.
Yes. You can connect with me on Instagram at I am Tiffany Paul. I also have my podcast, Break the Matrix podcast, which is going to be reworked soon into a new brand, TBD. But if you find me on Instagram, you will be up to date on where it's going. And if you subscribe to Break the Matrix podcast, if it's still branded as that, you'll see the change happen. And we're going to continue our conversations around expanding our awareness, living in infinite possibilities, dreaming big, reaching for a life that feels good, and just like honoring the truth and trusting yourself. So, everything we talked about today, you can tune into the podcast to learn more. And I'll also be going live on Instagram more over the summer as well. So, check me out on Instagram and the podcast, and that's where you can find me.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom, your light, and just your vision, your mission, your why. Thank you so much for being here today. It's been such an honor.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. It's so
Yay.
fun.